The stars moved like silent watchers in the blackness of space. The diplomatic courier ship, Halcyon Trail, glided smoothly through the galaxy, its silver hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside that small vessel sat Elias Trent, a man who never thought his name would ever be remembered. He was not a soldier, not a scientist, not a leader. He was just a messenger, a quiet man with a calm face and a steady heart. His only job was to carry words between powerful people who would never know who he was. Elias looked out of the ship's narrow viewport. A great glowing planet appeared ahead, the throne world of the Gyrian Dominion, a mighty alien empire that stretched across hundreds of star systems. Their capital world, SciFi-Prime, shone like a living jewel. The blue oceans shimmered beneath a golden atmosphere, and massive orbital towers reached into space like metal trees. This was not a place for someone like him. His hands rested on a small, black diplomatic case. Inside it was a single silver capsule containing a coded message from the Human Council. A message meant only for the Gyrian Queen herself. Elias didn't know what it said. Couriers were never told. They carried secrets, but they were never allowed to know them. Docking sequence initiated. The ship's soft AI voice said. Elias straightened his uniform, which was plain gray with only a small blue patch, the symbol of Earth. His heartbeat grew faster. He had done this many times before, but this was different. This was the first time he was delivering a message directly to the Gyrian royal court. The docking platform was enormous. Giant arches of polished crystal rose high above the floor, and alien banners flowed down from them like rivers of light. The air shimmered faintly, carrying a sweet metallic scent. Rows of alien guards, tall silver-skinned Gyrians with smooth faces and glowing blue eyes lined the path. Their movements were precise and silent. Elias walked between them with careful steps. His boots echoed on the polished floor. Every eye in the room followed him, but no one spoke. He felt very small in that moment. A single human, surrounded by an empire, at the far end of the hall. On a wide elevated platform sat the throne of luminous echoes. And on that throne was the one being who ruled it all, Queen Zalrena, monarch of the Gyrian Dominion. Her presence filled the room like a storm that had chosen to be quiet. She was tall, elegant, and unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Her skin shimmered like a pearl made of light. A crown of transparent crystal floated gently above her head, glowing with soft energy. Her 6 eyes, set in 2 graceful rows, glimmered like stars seen through water. This was not a ruler who needed to raise her voice to be obeyed. This was someone who commanded reality itself. Elias lowered his eyes as he approached the steps of the throne. His mission was simple. Hand over the capsule and leave the way he came. But the moment he knelt, the queen spoke his name. Elias Trent, she said in a calm, melodic voice that vibrated gently through the air. Step forward. The entire hall stiffened. Even the guards seemed surprised. Elias lifted his head slowly, unsure if he had heard correctly. No alien leader had ever addressed a human courier directly. Normally, messages were taken by attendants. Couriers were invisible. But the queen's gaze held him firmly. He stepped forward, his knees weak. You carry the message, she continued. But it is not the message that matters, Elias blinked. Your Majesty, I am only a messenger. The capsule is for your council. I am aware, she said. But you are not leaving. Quiet wave of whispers filled the chamber. One of the Gyrian ministers moved closer to the throne, his robes whispering across the floor. He bowed and spoke in their native tongue, a series of clicking tones and soft hums. The queen listened, then raised one slender hand. Silence returned. Elias felt his chest tighten. Not leaving? That wasn't part of the plan. Couriers never stayed. Couriers were meant to be forgotten. 2 Gyrian guards stepped forward, not aggressively, but firmly. They motioned for Elias to follow. The court doors closed behind him with a soft boom that echoed through his bones. He walked down long corridors lit by a blue glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The palace was strange, alive in some way. It almost felt as if it was breathing. They entered a chamber filled with tall columns and strange floating objects, orbs of crystals spinning slowly in the air, releasing soft notes that sounded like music. It was beautiful, but also unsettling. He was offered a seat made of some soft, smooth material. It felt warm, as if it had a heartbeat. Elias sat there, trying to keep his breathing steady. A dozen questions ran through his mind. Had he done something wrong? Was there something dangerous in the message? Were they going to arrest him? Minutes later, a tall alien with golden markings on their face entered. Their steps were slow and elegant, their expression unreadable. "Human Elias," the alien said in perfect English. "The Queen wishes to speak with you privately?" His mouth went dry. "Me? Why me?" "You will understand." They led him through another set of wide doors into a circular room that opened into a transparent wall. Through it, he could see the great city of SciFi-Prime, glowing towers, rivers of light, and flying ships moving like graceful birds. The Queen stood there, looking out at her empire. Her robe flowed like liquid silver. "Elias Trent," she said softly without turning around. "Do you know why you are here?" Elias hesitated. "To deliver a message." She finally turned, and her 6 eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. "No, that is what they told you, but it is not why you were sent. I don't understand." The Queen moved closer. Despite her alien form, there was something strangely calm in her presence. Not threatening, just certain. "I have waited," she said, "a very long time for someone like you." Elias blinked. "Someone like me? He almost laughed nervously. "I'm just a messenger." Her head tilted slightly. "Yes, a messenger. That is why you were chosen." Outside the chamber, the royal court was buzzing with unease. Girian ministers whispered to each other. No human had ever been kept in the palace before. The Dominion was powerful, proud, and distant from the rest of the galaxy. The Queen breaking such a rule meant something serious was unfolding. But inside, Elias stood still as she began to explain. "Many centuries ago," the Queen said, "before your kind reached the stars, before even my empire rose, a prophecy was written in the star records. It spoke of a moment when the galaxy would stand on the edge of silence, when empires would grow old, their power fading like dying suns. And in that moment, a voice from the quiet world would bring the last accord." She paced slowly. Like a teacher explaining a truth that could not be avoided, "The quiet world is your Earth, Elias Trent. You come from the one world the prophecy described, and you are not here by chance?" Elias stared at her, almost forgetting to breathe. "But I didn't choose this. I don't even know what's inside that message." "You don't need to," she said. "The message was a door. You are the key." Her words made no sense, and yet the way she spoke made it hard to doubt her. Back on Earth, Elias had grown up in a small town. He wasn't special. He worked quietly, loved books, fixed old radios, and never imagined himself as a hero. He became a courier because he liked traveling, nothing more. He liked being part of something bigger, without being in the spotlight. And now, standing before an alien queen in a palace that reached the stars, it felt like the universe had decided to pull him into its center. "Why me?" Elias asked softly. "There are billions of people on Earth. Why would it be me?" The Queen raised a hand, and one of the spinning orbs floated toward them. Inside the orb was a glowing map of stars, spiraling like a living galaxy. "Because your voice carries a frequency," she explained. "Something buried deep in your species' evolution. When you speak, the ancient network listens. It is something even your kind has forgotten." "My voice?" Elias almost laughed. "I'm just a guy who delivers envelopes." Her eyes softened slightly. It was strange, but he almost felt she understood his fear. The universe often hides its greatest keys in ordinary hands. Word spread quickly across the Girian palace. Some alien nobles demanded to know why the Queen was holding a human. Some were afraid, others angry. A human was not supposed to matter in the politics of the Dominion. Humans were a small species. Clever, yes, but young and unimportant on the galactic scale. But the Queen's word was final. Elias was placed in a guest chamber high in one of the palace towers. It was unlike any room he had ever seen. Walls shimmered like liquid light. The bed seemed to float above the floor. The night sky of Prime stretched out beyond the transparent window. He lay there, staring at the alien stars. He could hear faint, distant music, like the palace itself was alive and singing. His thoughts chased each other like wild birds. A few hours ago, he had been a nobody. Now an entire empire was watching him. The next morning, a soft chime woke him. A tray of alien fruits floated in front of the door. A silver drone hovered silently, projecting a calm blue light. Elias touched one of the fruits. It felt warm. When he bit into it, it tasted like honey in cool rain. The drone led him back to the Queen's chamber. This time, the hall was empty except for her. She stood in front of a giant star chart, thousands of lights blinking across it. He recognized some of them famous star systems humans had barely begun to explore, but most were unknown. Elias, the Queen said, "Your presence has already changed the tides. My ministers wish me to send you back. The other empires will question why a human is here, but I cannot let you go." Elias folded his arms, trying to steady himself. "I still don't understand. What exactly do you want from me?" She turned to him slowly. "Not what I want. What the galaxy needs?" She touched the star chart, and a section of it lit up, a region called the Shattered Belt. It was a place Elias had heard about in passing, a border of unstable systems, a place where wars had burned for generations. "This," she said, "is where the end will begin. Unless the Accord is activated." What Accord? A pact written before the birth of most empires. A network built into the stars themselves. It cannot be opened by power, or weapons, or ancient codes. It can only be opened by a specific harmonic pattern carried in the voice of one species. Your species. You. The words sank into him slowly. He felt like a wave was rising over his head, and he had nowhere to run. "You want me to?" "Talk to the stars." "Not talk," she said softly. Sing Elias almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but her expression was too serious. This was real to her, to them, maybe to the entire galaxy. Later that day, he was taken to the Hall of Resonance, an enormous circular chamber deep beneath the palace. It looked like no place built by hands. The walls pulsed faintly, like they were alive. Strange symbols glowed along the floor. At the center stood a raised platform with a crystal structure floating above it, ancient. Humming with quiet power, the Queen followed behind him, her long robe trailing like liquid silver. A group of alien engineers and priests stood around the chamber, their faces lit by the soft blue light of the crystal. "This structure has waited," she said, "for thousands of your years. It will only respond to one voice." Elias looked at the platform nervously. "And you think it's mine?" "I know it is, but I don't even know what to say." "You do not have to know," she replied calmly. "The resonance is already inside you." The crystal pulsed gently as if it were breathing. Elias stood on the platform. The air felt thick and warm, like standing inside a living heart. He could feel something, a quiet hum in his bones, a soft vibration in his chest. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it. But then the crystal answered. A soft tone filled the room, rising like a sunrise. It wasn't a song made of words, but a pure, simple sound. Without meaning to, Elias opened his mouth and exhaled. A note came out, shaky at first, then steady. It wasn't loud, but it carried through the hall like wind over water. The Queen's eyes widened. The crystal blazed brighter, and strange lines of light spread across the floor, forming patterns no human language could name. The engineers gasped. The priests lowered their heads. The Accord had heard him. The resonance ended after only a minute, but the chamber felt changed. It was as if the walls were holding their breath. Elias staggered back, dizzy. His hands were shaking. The Queen approached, but not like a ruler now, more like someone standing before a long-awaited dawn. "It has begun," she whispered. Elias stared at her, still trying to understand what had just happened. "What did I do?" "You opened the first gate," she said. "The rest will follow." He shook his head. "But I didn't even know what I was doing." "I didn't." "I'm not a hero. Heroes are rarely born knowing they are," the Queen replied gently. That night, as the Gyrian sky turned dark gold, Elias stood alone on the palace balcony. The stars above him didn't feel distant anymore. They felt like they were listening. He thought about his quiet life on Earth, the small house near the river, the warm smell of old books, the hum of the courier ship. All of it felt so small compared to the vast living galaxy now opening before him. But beneath the fear, something else grew, a quiet, stubborn light, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, being ordinary didn't mean being unimportant, far below. In the royal chambers, ministers argued, nobles whispered, and empires waited. The Queen had made her choice. She would not let the human messenger go, not because of power, not because of politics, but because in his voice lay the key to the galaxy's last chance at peace. And Elias Trent, who had never asked to be anyone special, was about to become a name the stars would never forget. The night air on GalacticPrime was cool and calm. The city below the palace shimmered like a sea of light. Elias Trent stood on the balcony of the guest chamber. Looking out at the alien world that no longer felt as distant as it once did, he remembered the moment in the Hall of Resonance, how the crystal had answered his voice, how light had filled the room, and how everyone, even the Queen, had stared at him as if the universe had just shifted. He had never wanted to be important, but now, whether he liked it or not, he was. A soft, gentle sound echoed behind him. The Queen entered quietly, as if the palace itself made way for her. She wore a simple silver robe that caught the light of the stars. Her crown floated above her head, glowing faintly. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was calm as always, but there was something deeper now, something like hope. Elias nodded slowly. "Couldn't sleep." "Neither could I," the Queen admitted. "The Accord has awakened. It has been silent for more than 1,000 of your years. And it answered you." Elias turned to face her fully. "I don't even know what I did. I just made a sound that carried the right frequency," she said softly. "One that no Gyrian, no other species, could produce. Only someone from your world." She moved closer, standing next to him at the edge of the balcony. The city lights reflected in her 6 eyes like distant suns. "The moment your voice touched the crystal," she explained, "a signal went out into the stars. It has already reached several listening stations. Other empires will hear it. They will know the Accord is returning." Elias swallowed. "And what happens then?" "Then," she said, "the galaxy will come here." The news spread faster than light. Across distant systems and forgotten outposts, the signal of Accord was detected. In the cold rings of the Vexor system, scientists stared at their screens in awe. In the glowing cities of the Lyrian Trade Union, ministers called emergency meetings. Even the isolated Halari clans who hadn't spoken to outsiders for decades opened their channels. For centuries, the Accord had been only a story, a legend told in quiet rooms. A promise that if the stars ever grew too divided, Key would appear, a voice from the quiet world. And now, its voice had spoken. Within the Gyrian palace, activity burst like a silent storm. Courtiers hurried through glass halls. Envoys arrived from distant sectors, and the Queen's council met day and night. The air buzzed with tension, curiosity, and a strange kind of fear. Elias was kept safe in a high tower, not locked away, but carefully watched. Guards were always nearby, silent and tall. Servants brought him food, books, and recordings to help him learn more about the galaxy. But he knew the real reason. It kept him close. He was the key now. One morning, a Gyrian minister named Karen entered his room. Unlike the Queen, Karen's voice was sharp and formal. "Human Elias," Karen said. "Representatives from 5 major empires are on their way. The Accord has changed everything." Elias shifted nervously. "I didn't mean to change anything. It does not matter," Karen said. What matters is what you will do next. 2 days later, the first envoys arrived. Ships from across the stars filled the orbital rings around SciFi-Prime from the palace balcony. Elias could see the sky glittering with ships of every shape and color long, slender cruisers, wide glowing orbs, and even living biovessels that pulsed like hearts. Each envoy came to speak with the Queen, and every single one of them asked about the human. Elias felt like a man standing in the center of a storm he had not created. The Queen finally summoned him to the Hall of Celestial Mirrors, a vast room where the walls showed not reflections, but shifting visions of stars and distant worlds. She sat on the throne at the center, surrounded by alien diplomats, tall, insect-like beings from the Vexery League, soft-skinned thinkers from the Lyrian Union, shimmering cloud forms from the Halari clans, and more. All of them turned when Elias entered. The room fell silent. "This," the Queen announced, "is Elias Trent of Earth, the voice of the Accord." The envoys whispered among themselves. A tall Lyrian with a long glowing neck stepped forward. "This is the one who opened the signal?" the alien asked in a smooth, melodic tone. The Queen nodded. "Yes." "He is human," another envoy said, their voice full of surprise. "A new species. A minor one." Elias stood still, trying to look braver than he felt. Wasn't sure if they saw him as a miracle or a mistake. The Queen raised a hand for silence. "The Accord does not choose empires," she said. "It chooses hearts." That silenced the whispers for a moment. Then the Lyrian envoy spoke again. "If the Accord is returning, then the old Council of the Stars must be rebuilt." "Yes," the Queen replied. "And Elias Trent will stand at its center." Elias felt his stomach twist. "Me? Wait, no, I'm just a messenger. I don't know anything about galactic councils or star politics." The Queen's gaze softened. "You are not here to rule, Elias. You are here to speak. The Accord responds to your voice, and through it, the galaxy can be united again," the envoys murmured. Some nodded. Others looked doubtful. But none could deny the signal. The human had already done something no emperor or council had achieved in centuries. He had woken the Accord. Over the following days, Elias trained in the Hall of Resonance with alien sound engineers and priests. They taught him how to control his breathing, how to match the frequencies of the Accord crystal. His natural voice carried the key, but to activate the full network, he needed precision. It was not about singing beautifully. It was about harmonics, tones that carried through space, touching devices that had not spoken in 1,000 years. At first, Elias struggled. The tones were delicate, the patterns strange. But slowly he began to understand. It was like learning a new language, one made of pure sound. Sometimes when he practiced, the crystal responded with flashes of light that painted the ceiling in silver. Sometimes it echoed his voice with an ancient sound that felt like a whisper from the stars themselves. Outside the training halls, the political world was heating up. Not every empire welcomed the Accord. Some feared it. The Accord meant a council where no single power could dominate, a galaxy where even the smallest voices could be heard. Some rulers preferred the old ways of silence and control. They did not like that a human, a newcomer, had become the center of it all. But the Queen stood firm. She made it clear to every envoy. Elias would not be handed over. The Accord had chosen him, and she would protect that choice. Elias didn't fully understand the scale of what was happening, but he could feel it. Every day, more ships arrived. Every day, more eyes turned toward him, and deep down, something inside him began to shift too. One night, the Queen invited him to walk through the Garden of Starlight, a quiet place hidden at the top of the palace. Silver trees with glowing leaves surrounded them. Soft streams of light flowed along the paths like living rivers. "Elias," she said softly as they walked, "do you know why I believe in the Accord?" He shook his head. "Because I was born into a war that has never truly ended," she said. "My people rose to power long ago. We built cities, ships, empires. We created order. But it was built on silence, on fear. The Accord is the only thing that ever made the galaxy speak together." Elias listened quietly. "When the Accord fell," she continued, The stars began to drift apart. Alliances broke. Trust faded. We learned to live in shadows instead of harmony. I swore that if the Accord ever returned, I would not let it die again. She stopped under a glowing tree and turned to him, and now it stands here in you. He looked at her with tired eyes. I'm just one man. That is why it is beautiful, she said. Because sometimes the universe needs someone who doesn't wear a crown. The day of the first activation arrived like the rising of a second sun. A massive structure called the Celestial Gate floated in orbit above GalacticPrime, built before living memory. It had been silent for centuries. The Accord crystal in the palace was only the first key. The Celestial Gate was the heart. Elias stood in a special chamber aboard a royal shuttle, his hand shaking slightly. The Queen stood beside him, calm as always. When you speak, she said, the gate will open channels across the galaxy. It will call every empire to the table. And if I fail, Elias asked softly, then we wait another 1,000 years, she said simply. But I do not believe you will fail. The shuttle docked with the Celestial Gate. Inside, everything glowed faintly, like a sleeping creature just beginning to wake. A round platform waited at the center of the chamber. As Elias stepped onto it, the lights grew brighter. He could feel the hum in his bones, stronger than before. Dozens of alien delegates watched through transparent walls. Their faces were tense, expectant, curious. Elias took a deep breath. The Queen's voice reached him softly. Remember, Elias. The universe does not need a perfect hero. It needs a true voice. He closed his eyes. The hum rose. He let the sound fill his lungs. And then he spoke not words, but tones. A low, clear note. Then another. And another. The gate answered. Light exploded gently through the room, not blinding, but warm. Rings of energy spread outward like ripples in water. Through the observation windows, the alien delegates saw the entire structure awaken. Ancient symbols lit up. Channels opened. Across the galaxy, silent beacons stirred to life. The Accord was awake. The signal spread like a sunrise across the stars. On distant worlds, old stations flickered to life. Long-dormant devices hummed again. The far corners of space, people stopped and looked to the sky as the stars themselves seemed to sing. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy shared a single moment. Elias stepped down slowly, his breath shaking. The Queen met him at the base of the platform. There was no grand cheer, no explosion of sound, just a quiet, powerful silence. The kind that happens when something truly great has begun. You did it, she said softly. Elias stared at her. I just spoke. Yes, she replied. And the stars listened. In the weeks that followed, preparations began for the Council of Accord, a gathering of every major power. Not all agreed to join at first. Some argued, some doubted. But the power of the Accord was greater than any single voice. The signal itself pulled them closer. Elias became a symbol. Not a king. Not a leader, but a messenger who carried something no one else could. Children on distant worlds learned his name. Historians spoke of the human voice that woke the Accord. And through it all, Elias remained the same quiet man who once thought his life didn't matter. One evening, the Queen invited him back to the throne room. This time, there were no envoys. No ministers. Just the two of them. The council will form soon, she said. And when it does, everything will change. Empires will speak together. Old wounds may heal. Elias looked around the great hall. It no longer felt intimidating. It felt familiar. I still don't understand why it was me, he admitted. The Queen smiled gently. Because the galaxy has been waiting for a voice that did not seek power. It needed someone ordinary. Sometimes ordinary hearts carry the strongest echoes. She stepped closer. Elias Trent, you were never just a messenger. You were the message. Her words sank into him slowly, like the light of a dawn he never thought he'd see. The day the Council of Accord opened, millions watched across the stars. Representatives of countless species gathered. Beneath the glowing banners of the Celestial Gate, Ships hung in orbit like bright lanterns. Music, soft harmonic tones filled the air. Elias walked through the main corridor, dressed in simple gray, the same uniform he wore when he first arrived. He refused to wear royal robes. He wanted the galaxy to see him for what he was, a human messenger. He stepped onto the central platform as the Queen stood beside him. The crowd fell silent. The cord crystal floated above them, glowing softly. He took a deep breath, the way he had practiced so many times. Then he spoke, not with power, not with command, but with clarity. "I am Elias Trent of Earth," he said. "I am not a ruler. I am not special. I came here to deliver a message. But the stars had another message to deliver through me. It is simple. We are stronger when we speak together, so let us speak." His voice echoed through the chamber. The accord answered, resonating through the gate, across ships, across worlds. A deep, gentle hum filled the galaxy once more. And then, one by one, the delegates placed their hands, or their alien equivalents, on the glowing platforms. A new council was born. Later that night, the Queen and Elias stood once again on the balcony of the palace. The sky was filled with ships, but not in war, in gathering, in unity. "You gave the galaxy its voice back," the Queen said softly. Elias smiled, a little tired, but peaceful. "Only did what I was sent to do. I delivered a message." "Yes," she said, looking at the stars. "But the message was yourself." For a long moment, they both stood in silence, watching the stars sing. And somewhere, far beyond, the galaxy listened.